Where Quirks Began, the First Glow Baby. In the world of My Hero Academia, the age of superpowers began in a truly unexpected way. One quiet day in the city of King, China, a baby was born who glowed with light. The first quirk ever officially recorded. This newborn's ability to radiate a brilliant luminescence from its body astonished doctors and defied everything previously known about human biology. At the time, no one understood what they were witnessing. Was it a miracle, a mutation, or something else entirely? This historic child, later nicknamed the luminescent baby, marked the dawn of a new era. Soon after this baby's birth, similar extraordinary cases began cropping up across the globe. People from different countries and backgrounds started manifesting uncanny abilities, not only from birth, but even suddenly during childhood or puberty. The once unimaginable had become reality. Humanity was evolving in real time, developing superpowers that came to be known as meta-abilities, and later, simply quirks. At first, the glowing newborn was a singular marvel, a curious news headline that captured the world's attention. But as more and more individuals began to develop powers, the true significance set in. This wasn't an isolated phenomenon. It was a tectonic shift in the course of society. The luminescent baby's birth was the spark that ignited a rapid chain reaction. Within a few short years, the existence of quirks went from a mysterious rarity to an everyday reality. A new chapter of human history had begun, and it all started with that one shining infant. Little did anyone know the mix of wonder and turmoil that would follow in the wake of this baby's innocent glow. How society responded to sudden mutation. The sudden emergence of people with superhuman powers sent shockwaves through society. At first, there was confusion and curiosity. Scientists around the world raced to explain what was causing these meta-abilities. One research team proposed an outlandish theory that perhaps a previously unknown disease carried by mice had triggered these mutations, while others argued it was a natural next step in human evolution. In truth, no definitive cause was ever found, and the lack of answers only fueled public anxiety. After all, if quirks could appear so randomly, what did that mean for the future of humanity? Many people feared what they couldn't understand. As the number of quirk users grew, fear and prejudice quickly replaced fascination. Society had never encountered anything like this, and there were no guidelines on how to coexist with suddenly superpowered neighbors. Were these individuals still normal? Could they be trusted? People without quirks, the majority at the time, grew increasingly suspicious of those with unusual abilities. Rumors spread that these powered humans might be diseased or dangerous. In playgrounds and workplaces, anyone displaying extraordinary abilities often faced hostility. Discrimination reared its head almost immediately, as frightened citizens labeled the powered minority as monsters or carriers of some contagion. The very definition of what it meant to be a normal person was upended practically overnight. The strain on society was enormous. Long-settled questions about laws, rights, and public safety were suddenly thrown into chaos. Governments didn't know how to legislate these new abilities. Could a person be held responsible for accidental property damage caused by an out-of-control quirk? Was it fair to give someone with a quirk an advantage in jobs or sports? With no precedents to follow, debates raged among lawmakers and civilians alike. For a time, everyday life almost ground to a halt amid the uncertainty. Mobs and protest groups formed in response to the fear. Some groups demanded the quarantine or expulsion of quirk-bearing individuals, while others, often families of quirk users, pleaded for understanding and acceptance. Clashes between these factions sometimes turned violent. It was as if the world woke up one morning to find that the rules had all changed and nobody could agree on the new ones. Tragically, even those who tried to promote tolerance became targets of fear. In one early case, a compassionate mother defended her child, a boy born with a subtle meta-ability, by telling their community that it's just a little quirk of his, nothing to fear. She used the word quirk to imply it was a harmless personal oddity. The word caught on, but not the sentiment behind it. Instead of calming people, her comment was met with outrage by neighbors who refused to accept these changes. In a grim turn of events, that mother was murdered by extremists who saw her child's ability as an abomination. Her simple term, quirk, lived on, eventually becoming the common name for meta-abilities. But it gained acceptance only decades later. Today she's somberly remembered as the mother of quirks, a woman whose loving perspective was far ahead of her time. Her fate was a dark reminder of how deep the fear ran in those early days. All the while, new quirk users kept appearing, and not all of them had peaceful intentions. For every frightened family trying to keep a low profile, there seemed to be someone else eager to use their powers for selfish or criminal ends. Banks were robbed by people who could turn their fingers into lockpicks or blast open vaults with explosions. Some individuals used powers like invisibility or super strength to terrorize others and act above the law. These early superpowered criminals came to be known as villains, and they thrived in the chaos. The social order was beginning to crumble under the weight of this sudden mutation. It was a time of uncertainty, fear, and rapid change, a volatile mix that would soon give rise to both unsung heroes and unprecedented evils. Before long, a few beacons of hope did emerge amid the panic. Interestingly, the very first baby born with a quirk, the luminescent baby, grew up to become a symbol of peace for many. As an adult, that individual used the fame of being the first to speak out, urging humanity to come together and not lose sight of our shared goodness. This glowing child-turned-activist gathered a following of ordinary people, reportedly over 10 million supporters, who yearned for a return to stability and safety. For a brief moment, it seemed like unity was possible, that even with quirks, society could maintain peace. But this hope was short-lived. A malevolent force lurking in the shadows would not allow it, and his name would soon be spoken in fear by all. The rise of chaos and vigilante rule. Amid this social upheaval, lawlessness began to spread like wildfire. The sudden onslaught of criminals endued with quirks overwhelmed traditional law enforcement. After all, how could normal police officers, armed with nothing but batons or guns, contain a rampaging villain who could, say, create earthquakes or breathe fire? In these early years, chaos reigned. Powerful wrongdoers felt untouchable, and many cities were gripped by a sense of dread. It seemed as though the world was teetering on the edge of anarchy, with each new quirk incident threatening to spark mayhem. Reports of thefts, assaults, and public disasters caused by superpowered individuals dominated the news. For ordinary citizens, daily life turned into a gamble. You never knew if the person next to you might suddenly sprout claws, or if a simple trip to the market might be interrupted by a villainous clash.
If you're enjoying this peaceful dive into My Hero Academia lore, consider subscribing to the channel. There's much more to come, and I'd love to have you with us on this journey.
Yet, in this dire period, heroes also began to emerge. Not official heroes as we know them today, but everyday people who refused to stand by in the face of injustice. With governments paralyzed and institutions struggling to respond, courageous civilians took matters into their own hands. These were quirk users who, driven by moral duty or desperation, used their abilities to protect their communities where authorities could not. They had no sanction, no formal training, and often no recognition. People began to call them vigilantes, a term for those who enforce justice on their own terms. In a society with collapsing order, these vigilantes became the first true crime fighters of the quirk era. They apprehended thieves who could walk through walls, subdued rogue quirk users wreaking havoc, and sometimes even clashed with dangerous villains head-on. Often they wore makeshift costumes or masks to hide their identities, partly to avoid retaliation, and partly because what they were doing was technically illegal. There were no laws yet that permitted quirk use in public safety. These brave souls could easily be arrested themselves. Even so, the vigilantes persisted, earning gratitude from fearful communities. Their exploits laid the groundwork for the concept of the hero that would come later. This period came to be known as the Vigilantes era, a time when justice went underground and donned a homemade cape.
During this tumultuous era, one figure rose above all others, casting a long shadow across the world. All for One. In the midst of chaos, All for One appeared as if out of nowhere. A man with an unbelievably powerful quirk that allowed him to steal others' abilities and bestow those powers on whomever he pleased. To a populace desperate for stability, he presented himself as a sort of dark savior. All for One would approach frightened or disillusioned quirk users and offer them a deal. If someone hated their dangerous power or couldn't control it, he would remove their burden. If another person felt weak or helpless, he could grant them a new ability to make them feel strong. It seemed almost too good to be true. And indeed, there was a sinister catch. Each favor All for One did earned him the absolute loyalty of those he helped. Bit by bit, he amassed a following of empowered devotees who owed him everything. To many civilians, he initially appeared as a beacon of hope amid the anarchy, a man uniquely capable of making things right when society at large could not. They saw All for One as someone who could unite people and bring a form of order using quirks, even as governments floundered. In reality, All for One was manipulating the chaos for his own gain. With every quirk he stole, his personal power grew. With every quirk he gifted, his influence spread. While vigilantes fought in the streets out of altruism, All for One worked in the shadows, pulling strings and building an empire of indebted followers. Under his guidance, a fragile semblance of order did return to some areas, but it was a false peace, one enforced by fear and the overwhelming might of a single tyrant. All for One's rise turned the chaos into an organized kind of crime. He became the kingpin of an underworld where quirks were currency and people's hopes or resentments made them easy to control. The world's first and most powerful supervillain had arrived, and he intended to remake society to serve him. All for One's influence was felt in many tragic ways. Perhaps the most heartbreaking was the fate of the luminescent baby, the same glowing infant who had unknowingly started it all. As mentioned, this individual had grown into a young leader advocating for peace amid the turmoil, gathering millions in a movement to calm the world's fears. All for One perceived that peaceful movement as a threat to his own growing power. Unable to tolerate anyone commanding more admiration than himself, he decided to make a brutal example. In an event that shook the early quirk world, All for One hunted down and murdered the luminescent baby, snuffing out that beacon of hope. Tad cruelty upon cruelty, he even stole the young leader's glowing quirk for himself in the process. The news of this assassination sent ripples of terror through society. If even the kindly figurehead of peace could be so callously eliminated, it seemed no one was safe from the encroaching darkness. The luminescent baby's death marked the definitive end of any naive optimism left from the early days of quirks. It was now painfully clear that humanity's new powers could breed unimaginable evil as well as good. The era of vigilantes and villains was a double-edged sword. For every selfless hero without a license helping a neighbor, there lurked a menace like All for One, ready to exploit the vulnerable. These early years were a wild, lawless chapter of history, one defined by extremes of bravery and villainy before any rules were put in place.
In response to mounting chaos, governments around the world had to act. To restore stability, new laws were created to regulate quirk usage and define who could fight crime. The very first of these hero laws emerged in the United States, specifically in the state of Rhode Island. There, lawmakers passed a landmark statute establishing the world's first hero licensing system. This law required quirk users to register their powers with the government and set strict limits on using quirks in public. Crucially, it provided a legal pathway for vigilantes to become something new, pro-heroes, officially sanctioned to use their abilities in combating villains. It was a bold experiment to tame the chaos by turning unregulated heroes into a formal profession. However, the new system did not embrace every would-be hero. History records that in Rhode Island, nearly 200 active vigilantes were operating when the law took effect,
yet only a handful were accepted as licensed heroes. The rest found themselves in a harsh new reality. If they continued vigilante activities without a license, the law now branded them as criminals. Many were arrested or forced into retirement. In truth, the early hero laws were as much about controlling vigilantes as empowering them. By clearly separating heroes from villains based on who had a license, society could more easily punish anyone using their quirk outside the law's blessing. It was a necessary line in the sand. As one character insightfully notes in the lore, the true goal of licensing was not just to endorse heroes, but to define what a villain is. In other words, the world decided that using superpowers arbitrarily, without oversight, would no longer be tolerated. This shift was controversial at first. Imagine the public's concern. Governments were effectively authorizing certain people to fight, even kill if needed, using powers beyond normal human limits. Would these pro-heroes be any different from vigilantes or villains? In the beginning, many citizens and authorities felt uneasy giving a select few such dangerous liberties. But over time, as the first pro-heroes proved themselves, public support grew. Those pioneers in heroism acted with morality and courage. They demonstrated that a regulated hero could save lives and uphold the law rather than act above it. Seeing the positive impact of these new heroes, people slowly began to accept, even appreciate, the idea of heroism as a legitimate profession. With America's example leading the way, the concept of licensed heroes spread worldwide. Each country developed its own governing body for heroes. In Japan, this would eventually become the Hero Public Safety Commission, which oversees all pro-heroes domestically. Crucially, laws were standardized so that unauthorized quirk use, like a civilian using a quirk in public or in a fight, became illegal, except in true self-defense emergencies. The message was clear: leave the crime fighting to the licensed professionals. Regular police forces intentionally chose not to arm themselves with quirks to avoid blurring lines. Instead, police would work in tandem with heroes, handling investigations and arrests after heroes subdued the threats. As the dust began to settle on the initial chaos, it became obvious that society could not continue in a state of vigilante justice and rogue villains forever. The world's governments and institutions had to adapt, and quickly. Gradually, leaders around the globe moved from panic to plan. They started crafting laws and systems to bring quirks under some form of control. This was easier said than done. How do you regulate a phenomenon that can vary from something as innocuous as changing one's hair color to something as catastrophic as exploding a city block? Early regulations attempted to answer that. For instance, many countries introduced laws forbidding the unlicensed use of quirks in public. Simply put, if you had a superpower, you were not allowed to use it whenever you pleased, especially if it could affect others. Using a quirk was becoming like driving a car. You needed permission and proper training to do it legally. In these fledgling rules lay the foundation of the hero licensing system that would soon follow. But early on, enforcement was inconsistent and often heavy-handed, reflecting the lingering fear in the authorities' mindset. Governments feared both the quirk users and the angry quirkless mobs. They walked a tightrope, trying to prevent chaos without oppressing their citizens. One of the first major decisions was that traditional law enforcement and the military would not incorporate quirks into their standard arsenal. This may seem counterintuitive. Why wouldn't the police want officers with powers? But there was a clear logic. Leaders feared that blurring the line between superpowers and state power could lead to tyranny or rampant abuse. The police and soldiers were to uphold the law with conventional tools, as a check against the possibility of a superhuman police state. Instead, a new solution emerged. Let specially trained, accountable individuals handle quirk-related threats. And so the concept of the pro-hero was born. The idea was revolutionary at the time. crime fighters officially sanctioned by the government, whose job was to use quirks to uphold the peace. The blueprint for this came not from Japan initially, but from overseas. In the United States, which also had its share of quirk chaos, authorities pioneered a system to legally register and employ powered individuals as heroes. Notably, the state of Rhode Island is remembered as one of the first places to institute licensed heroes as a formal part of law enforcement. These early pro-heroes were essentially vigilantes given a badge, or perhaps a cape, and bound by a code of ethics and rules of engagement. They could use their powers to stop villains, but they also had to follow regulations and were held accountable for their actions. Gradually, this concept spread internationally. As Japan and other nations observed the relative success of the American experiment, they too began to create hero public safety commissions and hero training programs. The vigilantes who had once operated outside the law found a path to legitimacy. Many either joined the new system or faded away as the professionals took over. The transition wasn't immediate or smooth, but it was underway. A turning point from ad hoc heroics to organized hero society. Early on, public opinion on pro-heroes was sharply divided. Many people were relieved. At last, someone authorized and qualified would stand between civilians and supervillains. Seeing uniformed heroes patrolling the streets in bright costumes gave communities a much-needed sense of security. However, others were deeply skeptical or even opposed. To critics, this was effectively deputizing vigilantes and granting individuals license to use powers that could potentially kill or destroy. Handing such trust to quirk users felt dangerous to those who remembered the chaos. Was society just creating a sanctioned class of superpowered enforcers? Would heroes truly serve everyone, or would they become above the law? These anxieties made the introduction of heroes a controversial move. Pro-hero legislation faced protests in some cities, and there were incidents where early heroes were not welcomed by the locals. It took time, success stories, and carefully crafted laws like strict rules against heroes misusing their quirks to gradually win over the skeptics. Over time, the visible positive impact of heroes, rescuing people, stopping villains effectively, helped shift public sentiment. The period in which official heroes came to prominence, often referred to as the advent of the extraordinary or the dawn of the paranormal age, was marked by both celebration and caution. The world was essentially learning how to live with quirks through trial and error, and hero emulations were a central piece of that puzzle.
Not everyone wanted quirk usage to be strictly controlled, however. As laws tightened up on what average citizens could do with their powers, a counter-movement was brewing beneath the surface. To some, these regulations were an affront, an oppression of their very identity. Quirks were a part of who they were, so why should they need permission to use them? This perspective gave rise to the Meta Liberation Army, an underground organization that challenged the government's right to restrict quirk use. The Meta Liberation Army was led by an ambitious ideologue named Chikara Yatsubashi, better known by the alias Destro. Destro preached that quirk usage is a basic human right. He and his followers believed that society should embrace quirks completely and allow people to use their powers freely, without any oversight. To them, the early restrictions and the licensing of heroes were the first steps toward tyranny over the powered population. This movement gained a following, especially among those who felt marginalized or constrained by the new laws. People who might have lost jobs or status because they weren't allowed to use their quirks, or simply resented being told how to live their lives. Before long, the Meta Liberation Army's rhetoric turned into direct action. They organized protests and disseminated propaganda calling for quirk liberation. These calls fell on sympathetic ears in various countries, not just Japan. Eventually, Destro and his army went further and led an outright rebellion against multiple governments,
attempting to force the repeal of quirk restrictions. For several intense years, battles flared up as the Liberation Army clashed with state authorities and even with heroes. This conflict was essentially a war of ideals, individual freedom versus collective safety. Destro believed so fervently in his cause that he was willing to plunge society back into violence to prove his point. In the end, however, the Meta Liberation Army was defeated. The combined force of international law enforcement and pro-heroes was too strong, and most civilians ultimately sided with wanting order and safety. Chikara Destro Yotsubashi was captured and imprisoned for treason and inciting chaos. Destro's fight did not end with bars on his cell. While locked away, he authored a manifesto titled Meta Liberation War, outlining his philosophy and the story of his movement. It was part autobiography, part political treatise, a book that he hoped would inspire future generations to continue the struggle for quirk freedom. Soon after ensuring his work was published and distributed covertly to his followers, Destro took his own life in prison. In doing so, he turned himself into a martyr for the cause. His death could have been the end of the liberation movement, but the embers he left behind continued to smolder. Many of Destro's disciples went into hiding, preserving his teachings and waiting for a moment to rise again. Indeed, his legacy would resurface later, as modern heroes and villains eventually discover, proving that ideas are much harder to kill than people. With the fall of the Meta Liberation Army and the establishment of the pro-hero system, the age of open chaos gradually came to a close. Bit by bit, daily life normalized. Children with quirks started attending specialized schools to learn control and ethics, a trend that would lead to institutions like UA High School in Japan. Governments refined their laws to be more fair, protecting citizens from harm while also respecting that quirks are a natural part of people. Society, though scarred by the tumultuous transition, entered a newfound equilibrium. In the span of just a few generations, what was once unthinkable became the norm. Around 80% of the population now possesses a quirk, and having a superpower is considered completely ordinary. The world of My Hero Academia transformed from one terrified of sudden mutations to one where heroes soar across the skies and children dream of developing amazing powers of their own. But the road to get there was paved with strife, sacrifice, and the unwavering efforts of those who believed humanity could adjust and find hope in this new, extraordinary age. Long ago, at the dawn of the age of quirks, two brothers stood at the heart of an event that would shape hero society for generations. The elder brother possessed a unique ability that allowed him to steal quirks from others and bestow them as he pleased, while the younger brother appeared frail and quirkless. These brothers lived in a time of turmoil, when superhuman powers were new and poorly understood. The older sibling, driven by ambition, looked upon his little brother with a mix of contempt and warped affection. Unable to accept the younger's defiance of his plans, All for One decided to fix his brother's weakness by giving him a power, hoping to secure the boy's obedience. In a twisted act of mercy and control, All for One forced a powerful stockpiling quirk upon his defenseless younger brother. However, unbeknownst to him, the younger brother secretly harbored a quirk of his own, one that could be passed from person to person. The stockpiling power merged with the younger brother's innate transferability, and together they gave birth to an extraordinary new quirk, one for all. With this new power flickering to life inside him, the younger brother, later remembered as Yuichi, found hope even in captivity. Though sickly and slight, he had a steadfast spirit and a strong sense of justice, refusing to bow to his brother's tyranny. Yoichi tried to use the nascent embers of One for All to resist All for One,
even if his lone spark was nowhere near enough to defeat his older brother. Nonetheless, that first act of rebellion would ignite a flame destined to be passed down through the ages. In attempting to control his brother, All for One had unwittingly created the very power that would one day oppose him. While the first wielder of One for All struggled quietly against oppression, All for One set out to bend the world to his will. In those early days of superhuman society, chaos and fear spread as humanity grappled with the sudden emergence of quirks. No formal heroes or laws yet existed to rein in those who abused their powers, leaving many innocent people feeling lost and vulnerable. All for One took advantage of this upheaval, presenting himself as a savior to the desperate. With a calm smile and overwhelming abilities, he offered to take away quirks from those who saw their gifts as curses, and bestowed quirks to those who craved strength, all in exchange for unwavering loyalty. Whispers spread of a man who could grant miracles, cure the powerless, or relieve the burden of an unwanted ability. People with nowhere else to turn began to seek out this benefactor, grateful for the solutions he provided. By giving people what they most desired, All for One quietly forged an empire in the shadows. Many came to revere him for the boons he granted, never realizing how he manipulated them like pieces on a chessboard. He claimed to bring order and balance, but in truth, it was All for One who reigned from the darkness, pulling society's strings to serve his own ends.
As All for One's following grew, so too did his tyranny. Those who accepted his gifts became his devoted pawns, and anyone who dared defy him met a dreadful fate at the hands of his loyal enforcers. With cunning and an arsenal of stolen quirks, All for One crowned himself the unseen king of the underworld. A fragile peace settled over the land, a peace built on fear and false hope, sustained only by his iron grip. Yet even as his power peaked, a quiet resistance continued to glimmer against him, fueled by the very quirk he had unwittingly set into motion. For the younger brother's power, One for All, did not die with him. Before the first bearer drew his last breath, he succeeded in passing on this gift to a new successor, planting the seed of a legacy that would challenge All for One for centuries. Through acts of bravery and sacrifice, One for All was carried forward by a lineage of heroes. Each inheritor received not only a great power, but also a solemn duty to cultivate One for All's strength and one day use it to bring down the seemingly invincible evil of All for One. As years turned to decades, the sacred torch of this quirk was handed down from one brave soul to the next, whenever the previous wielder could fight no longer. What began with two brothers became an ongoing battle between their two powers and ideals, a conflict passed like an inheritance from generation to generation. In time, after many generations of growth, One for All produced a hero mighty enough to stand against All for One at last. The eighth wielder, Toshinori Yaji, known to the world as All Might, rose as the symbol of peace and challenged the dark tyrant directly. Their clash left All for One beaten and imprisoned, bringing a badly needed era of respite to society. But even that hard-won triumph did not break the cycle completely. All for One's malice persisted,
lurking in the shadows and in the heart of the protégé he had groomed to carry on his legacy. The struggle between one for all and all for one was not yet over. Yet this long struggle was a cruel burden for those caught in its cycle. The individuals who inherited one for all often lived under the looming shadow of all for one's threat. Many fell in battle before they could see the evil vanquished, entrusting their mission and quirk to a successor in their final moments. Some, like the noble Nana Shimura, the seventh bearer of One for All, sacrificed their personal lives for the cause. Nana made the painful choice to send her young son into hiding, hoping to keep her family safe from All for One's reach. It was a well-intentioned decision that would haunt her legacy. Deprived of her mother's presence, Nana's son grew up bitter and resentful toward heroes. And in a tragic twist of fate, the darkness she fought still found her family. All for One discovered Nana's forsaken grandson, Tenko, and took the boy under his wing, nurturing his hatred until he became the villain known as Tomura Shigaraki. Even as the heroes passed their torch to the next generation, the villain passed on his own terrible power as well. Each new bearer of One for All thus inherited not just a quirk, but the unresolved conflicts and sorrows of those who came before. A cursed cycle where love and sacrifice were so often entwined with pain. Through all these trials, One for All remained a beacon of hope and a tremendous weight to bear. The quirk's blessing is the immense power and resolve of many, concentrated into one. By inheriting One for All, even someone born without any special ability could rise to become a great protector, armed with the strength and wisdom of those who came before. One such person is Izuku Midoriya, a once quirkless youth who was chosen to carry this power and the hopes of his era. It is a gift of light meant to safeguard the innocent and keep the flame of justice alive. With it, a hero can stand against impossible odds, knowing they carry the faith of countless people on their shoulders. Yet, One for All is also a heavy burden, both physically and emotionally. It is not a quirk that comes naturally. Each new user's body must be trained rigorously to handle its power, or else risk being broken by its force. In the early days of his journey, the current bearer learned this the hard way, suffering painful injuries as his unprepared limbs shattered under the strain of One for All's might. Even All Might, the greatest hero of his time, was not immune to this toll. Years of heroic duty and a fierce battle with All for One left him grievously wounded, able to use the last embers of One for All only for brief moments. The quirk demands one's all, often leaving scars as a reminder of its cost. Beyond the physical toll, there is an invisible weight on the spirit. Every inheritor of One for All must bear the knowledge that they alone carry the hope of so many. The world looks to them as a beacon, a symbol of safety, which can be a lonely role to play. All Might, for example, chose to shoulder that responsibility in silence, maintaining a fearless smile to reassure everyone, even as his own injuries and worries stayed hidden behind the scenes. Such is the emotional burden carried by those who hold One for All. The pressure to live up to a legacy and never show doubt so that people can sleep soundly under their watch. One for All's power can even shorten the lifespan of its wielder under certain circumstances. As the quirk grows stronger with each generation, it can become more than any ordinary body can contain. In fact, research revealed that if someone who already has a quirk inherits One for All, the overflowing power will gradually wear away their life force. It is like pouring too much into a cup that is already full. Eventually, it spills over, and the vessel cracks. One former wielder, the fourth in line, unknowingly pushed himself to the brink. Possessing both his original quirk and One for All dramatically shortened his years, and he passed away far too young. To avoid this fate, One for All came to be entrusted only to those with empty vessels, individuals with no quirk of their own, who could bear its power more safely.
This insight was both enlightening and bittersweet. In a world where quirkless individuals have become increasingly rare, it meant that the line of One for All succession might soon come to an end. The current wielder may very well be the last to carry this torch, simply because few others could survive the burden now. In this way, the quirk that carries the hopes of the world also carries the hope of closure, the hope that in this generation the cycle of conflict will finally be broken, so that no one ever again need inherit such a heavy responsibility. One for All is a tremendous gift, but it asks for everything in return. Now, as we let these stories drift through our minds, we can appreciate how One for All is both the light in the darkness and the weight upon the hero's back. Born from the bond and clash of two brothers, tempered by the sacrifices of countless successors, it stands as a symbol of hope entwined with hardship. And yet there is comfort in this legacy. For every sacrifice there has been salvation. For every burden a new strength has risen. In the quiet of night, we trust that one day the long fight will come to a gentle end, and the ones who bore that burden so bravely will finally see the dawn of a peaceful era, an era made possible by the power of One for All. From chaos to order, early quirks and hero laws. When superhuman powers first appeared, the world of My Hero Academia plunged into chaos and uncertainty. The very first quirk on record, a baby glowing with light, heralded an era where 80% of the population would eventually have some uncanny ability. But in those early days, society was unprepared. Ordinary laws and institutions buckled under the sudden onslaught of quirk-wielding criminals and the widespread fear of these new superhumans. Crime spiked dramatically as some people used their newfound powers for selfish or violent ends, and prejudice against quirk users ran rampant among those still powerless. In this turbulent dawn of the extraordinary, it became impossible to define what normal anymore. Governments and communities struggled to maintain order while debating basic questions of rights and safety in a changing human race. Out of this confusion rose the first people who tried to protect the innocent on their own. These early heroes had no official status. They were vigilantes, citizens who took it upon themselves to curb crime using their quirks. For a time, vigilantes were the only line of defense in many areas. They operated in the shadows, inspired purely by a personal sense of justice or the desperate need to safeguard their neighbors. The manga's lore describes this period as the start of a vigilante era. These vigilantes were the prototype heroes, but without regulations or oversight, their actions occupied a gray zone. Some were praised as saviors, others feared as renegades. It was a wild and uncertain time,
where the line between hero and villain could blur without clear law to draw it. In response to mounting chaos, governments around the world had to act. To restore stability, new laws were created to regulate quirk usage and define who could fight crime. The very first of these hero laws emerged in the United States, specifically in the state of Rhode Island. There, lawmakers passed a landmark statute establishing the world's first hero licensing system. This law required quirk users to register their powers with the government and set strict limits on using quirks in public. Crucially, it provided a legal pathway for vigilantes to become something new, pro-heroes, officially sanctioned to use their abilities in combating villains. It was a bold experiment to tame the chaos by turning unregulated heroes into a formal profession. However, the new system did not embrace every would-be hero. History records that in Rhode Island, nearly 200 active vigilantes were operating when the law took effect, yet only a handful were accepted as licensed heroes. The rest found themselves in a harsh new reality. If they continued vigilante activities without a license, the law now branded them as criminals. Many were arrested or forced into retirement. In truth, the early hero laws were as much about controlling vigilantes as they were empowering them. By clearly separating heroes from villains based on who had a license, society could more easily punish anyone using their quirk outside the law's blessing. It was a necessary line in the sand. As one character insightfully notes in the lore, the true goal of licensing was not just to endorse heroes, but also to define what a villain is. In other words, the world decided that using superpowers arbitrarily, without oversight, would no longer be tolerated.
This shift was controversial at first. Imagine the public's concern. Governments were effectively authorizing certain people to fight, even kill if needed, using powers beyond normal human limits. Would these pro-heroes be any different from vigilantes or villains? In the beginning, many citizens and authorities felt uneasy giving a select few such dangerous liberties. But over time, as the first pro-heroes proved themselves, public support grew. Those pioneers in heroism acted with morality and courage. They demonstrated that a regulated hero could save lives and uphold the law, rather than act above it. Seeing the positive impact of these new heroes, people slowly began to accept, even appreciate the idea of heroism as a legitimate profession. With America's example leading the way, the concept of licensed heroes spread worldwide. Each country developed its own governing body for heroes. In Japan, this would eventually become the Hero Public Safety Commission, which oversees all pro-heroes domestically. Crucially, laws were standardized so that unauthorized quirk use, like a civilian using a quirk in public or in a fight, became illegal, except in true self-defense emergencies. The message was clear: leave the crime fighting to the licensed professionals. Regular police forces intentionally chose not to arm themselves with quirks to avoid blurring lines. Instead, police would work in tandem with heroes, handling investigations and arrests after heroes subdued the threats. Society had moved from a free-for-all into a carefully regulated system, aiming for the best of both worlds: the power of quirks harnessed by the discipline of law. UA High School, training heroes for a new era. As the Hero Pro system took root, it became apparent that training and educating heroes was just as important as creating laws. If young people were going to grow up to use their quirks responsibly, and perhaps even turn their powers into a career, they needed guidance. This led to the rise of hero academies, specialized schools and courses designed to teach the art of heroism. All across Japan and other parts of the world, high schools began offering heroics programs where students could develop their quirks, learn combat and rescue techniques, and study ethics and law. By integrating quirk training into formal education, society could ensure each new generation of heroes would be prepared both in strength and in principle to serve the public.
It's in this context that UA High School was founded in Japan. UA became the country's premier hero academy, an elite institution perched on a forested hilltop, dedicated wholly to nurturing the next generation of heroes. The name UA stands as a beacon of excellence. Over the years, this school has produced many of the nation's greatest champions. In fact, UA's reputation grew so strong that it's considered the top place for any aspiring hero to enroll. The dream school where plus ultra is the motto. In English, go beyond, urging students to push past their limits. At UA High, teens with exceptional potential are taught not only how to hone their quirks, but also how to think and act like heroes. The curriculum is a far cry from normal high schools. Yes, there are normal classes, but a huge emphasis is placed on rescue training, combat exercises, and even public relations practice. Students don their first hero costumes here and engage in carefully supervised battles and simulations. The idea is to simulate real-life hero scenarios in a controlled environment so that by the time they graduate, these young heroes have experience using their powers for good and working under pressure. Schools like UA even provide support gear and costumes for students, tailoring equipment to each individual's quirk, a crucial step in learning how to operate like a professional. Importantly, UA High and its counterparts don't just unleash students into the world upon graduation, they also emphasize the hero licensing process. In their final years of school, students must pass rigorous exams to earn their provisional hero licenses, allowing them to act in a limited hero capacity. Only with a full license, usually obtained after further experience or upon graduation, can they truly call themselves pro heroes. This practice ensures that by the time someone is a licensed hero, they've been vetted, educated, and tested. It's a far cry from the days of vigilantes learning by trial and error on the streets. This structured path from school to license to career was one of the great successes of the new hero society. It professionalized heroism, making it sustainable and accountable. UA High School's formation was a milestone in this societal shift. It symbolized hope that the chaos of the past could be overcome by knowledge and training. Rather than quirks being an unpredictable force tearing society apart, they became something that could be studied and harnessed for the public good. And indeed, UA has lived up to that promise countless times. Many of UA's alumni have risen to the very top of hero ranks. Legends like Endeavor, Best Jeanist, and Edshot all walked UA's halls as teens. Each year, the school's sports festival showcases students' talents in a grand tournament watched by pro agencies nationwide, often resulting in internships or mentorship offers. Through UA and schools like it, the world of My Hero Academia found a way to pass the torch of heroism to each new generation in an orderly, inspiring way. The school stands as a testament to how far society came from those early days of fear, turning what was once a source of chaos into a wellspring of trained, principled heroes ready to protect and serve. The hero ranking system, prestige and purpose. As hero society matured, a new question arose. How do we measure a hero's accomplishments? With hundreds of licensed heroes active, the public and the Hero Commission developed a system to recognize the best of the best. This led to the creation of the Hero Rankings, often presented in Japan as the Hero Billboard chart. The ranking system was developed partly to celebrate heroes' achievements and partly to provide accountability and motivation in the pro-hero community. By seeing who is excelling in their duties, the public gains confidence, and heroes themselves are spurred to work harder and smarter.
In Japan, the Hero Billboard chart JP is a high-profile event held twice a year. During this event, all active heroes are ranked based on their performance over the preceding months. The ranking is determined by a careful assessment of several factors: strength and ability, a hero's power level and combat effectiveness, number of resolved incidents, how many cases or missions they successfully handled, from crimes stopped to people rescued, contributions to society,
This includes not just fighting villains, but community service, disaster relief, and other positive impacts a hero has made. Public approval rating, essentially popularity and trust, measured by public surveys and media coverage. All these aspects are weighted to produce an overall score. The top heroes in the country are then announced and honored in the Billboard ceremony, with special attention given to the top 10 heroes. It's quite a spectacle, often televised and attended by both heroes and government officials, serving to introduce these top 10 to the public in grand fashion. We can imagine it almost like an award show for heroes, except it's not based on votes alone, but on real deeds and statistics. Being highly ranked carries significant benefits. The higher a hero's rank, the greater their prestige and influence. Top-ranked heroes command higher salaries, since in this world heroes are paid by the government according to their performance and rank. They can attract more sidekicks and better staff to their agencies. They even gain leverage to expand their hero agencies into larger operations, sometimes with multiple branch offices or specialized teams. For example, a hero in the top 10 often has a large agency with many sidekicks and resources, whereas a lower-ranked or local hero might just run a small office by themselves. In essence, the ranking system creates a meritocracy among heroes, where tangible success translates into more support and reach, which ideally helps them protect even more people. However, the impact of the ranking system on heroes' psyche is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it inspires competition and ambition. Many heroes students at UA dream of one day making it onto the charts, maybe even becoming the #1 hero. Ambition in itself isn't bad. It can push heroes to train harder and stay vigilant. We see this in characters like Endeavor, who for years was driven by a singular goal to surpass the #1 hero, All Might, and claim that top spot. Endeavor relentlessly improved his skills and took on cases, motivated largely by the ranking gap he desperately wanted to close. The rankings gave him a clear target to aim for. On the other hand, focusing on rank can cloud a hero's motives. The story doesn't shy away from this truth. Some heroes become too fixated on popularity or numbers, perhaps doing flashy work just to boost their public image, or feeling jealousy and despair if they can't climb higher. A dramatic example comes through the eyes of society during the hero-killer Stain incident. Stain, a villain with a warped sense of ethics, openly criticized many heroes as fakes, claiming they cared more about fame or paychecks than true heroism. He believed the ranking system and the career aspect had seduced some heroes away from selfless justice. While Stain's answer, murdering heroes he deemed unworthy, was abhorrent, his words struck a chord in universe. Public trust in heroes wavered for a time, as people asked, are pro-heroes just celebrities chasing high rankings, or true guardians of the peace? This shows how the hero rankings, for all their positives, also introduce pressure and moral questions. Still, it's undeniable that the ranking system gave society beloved icons. Being #1 hero is more than just a title. It means you're the pillar of heroism for that era. For ages, All Might held the #1 rank in Japan, and he embodied everything the rankings were meant to reward. He had overwhelming success in combat and rescue, virtually 0 defeats in his career, innumerable cases resolved, and sky-high public approval. People smiled just upon seeing him, and villains felt fear. All Might's long tenure at the top helped solidify the symbol of peace image. He wasn't merely the highest-ranked hero, he was a living legend that transcended the charts. When he could no longer continue and officially retired, the Hero Billboard event crowned Endeavor as the new number one. But even Endeavor himself knew that ranking did not automatically earn him the same love and trust All Might had. He had to work to prove he deserved it. In that sense, the ranking system also creates narratives of growth. A hero who rises in the ranks often goes through personal change to shoulder greater responsibility. We will see that with Endeavor learning to be a true number one. Meanwhile, new heroes like Hawks, a younger prodigy who quickly ascended to the number two spot, add excitement and change to the list, showing how the nature of heroism evolves over time.
Ultimately, the hero rankings were developed to encourage heroes to be their best and to reassure the public. By publicly acknowledging heroism's top performers, society says, "We see your effort, and we trust you with our safety." And for the heroes, the chance to stand on that podium is a powerful motivator, not necessarily for vanity's sake, but for what it represents, having made a real difference on a grand scale. In a story so focused on inspiring others, the rankings are a concrete way the world honors its heroes, and also a plot device that explores the pride and pitfalls that come with being on top. All Might, the symbol of peace, redefines heroism. In the history of My Hero Academia's Hero Society, no figure looms larger than All Might. Before his retirement, All Might was the uncontested number one hero for years, but more importantly, he was known as the symbol of peace. This title was not granted lightly. It reflected how singular and transformative his presence was. All Might was different from other pro-heroes in almost every conceivable way. He didn't just do the job, he elevated what it meant to be a hero. His rise to prominence fundamentally redefined heroism for everyone who followed. From the moment All Might debuted, he set himself apart with his overwhelming power and unwavering smile. His quirk, One for All, a super strength power passed down through generations, gave him strength beyond any other hero of his time. But it wasn't strength alone that made All Might special. It was how he used it and the persona he crafted around it. All Might would dash into danger with a thunderous laugh and a booming declaration that everything is fine. Why? Because I am here, instantly reassuring citizens in peril. He made a point to always appear fearless and joyful, even in the face of dreadful villains. This trademark smile of his was taught by his mentor, who believed the ones who smile are the strongest. That philosophy became All Might's creed. He understood that a true hero's presence should inspire hope, not fear. Unlike some heroes who keep a professional distance or who might show fatigue, All Might gave his full heart to the public. He spent countless hours, often off the clock, just traveling the streets, making sure people felt safe. There were tales of him stopping to help with the smallest problems, or posing for photos with admirers, always gracious. He had a larger-than-life charisma that turned him into a beloved figure worldwide. Crucially, All Might never seemed motivated by money or rankings, even though he sat at the top of them. His motivation was a pure, almost selfless desire to be the pillar that holds up society's peace. In private, he admitted his greatest dream was to become a hero whom everyone could rely on, especially in the toughest of times. He achieved that dream through relentless dedication, at great personal cost. All Might's rise through Hero Society was meteoric. As a student at UA High School decades ago, he showed great promise, though interestingly, he began quirkless, only gaining his power when it was passed to him by his predecessor. Once he entered the field, it was clear no villain could stand against him for long. He racked up an unbroken record of victories and life-saving feats. Villains across Japan learned to fear even the mere possibility of All Might arriving on the scene. In fact, his presence alone became a crime deterrent, a phenomenon unheard of before him. While the rest of the world still grappled with chaotic crime rates, Japan enjoyed an era of relative peace because All Might patrolled its streets. The underworld spoke of him in hushed tones.
Many criminals simply chose not to act on schemes, knowing All Might might swoop in like a force of nature. In this way, he literally embodied peace through power. Not power misused, but power steadfastly devoted to the good of all. What truly cemented All Might as the paragon of heroism was his self-sacrifice and integrity. He repeatedly pushed himself beyond his limits to save others, even when it gravely harmed him. Years before the main story, All Might suffered a severe injury in a battle with the evil All for One that limited his abilities. Yet, rather than retire then, he continued hero work for as long as he physically could, hiding his pain behind that iconic smile. He felt it was his duty to keep going, because if the symbol of peace faltered, what would happen to public morale? This reveals how All Might's sense of responsibility outweighed any concern for his own life. He epitomized the idea that a hero is someone who gives everything of themselves. Paperwork, sleep, even personal relationships fell by the wayside as he devoted himself entirely to being the guardian of society. Other pro-heroes admired him deeply, even if they couldn't fully emulate that lifestyle. Because of All Might's shining example, the very definition of a true hero in this world became tied to his image. The hero killer Stain, twisted as he was, pointed out something telling. In his eyes, only All Might was a true hero. The rest were phonies in comparison. Stain's extreme viewpoint underscores just how saintly All Might appeared. Even a villain obsessed with purity and heroism could not deny All Might's genuine virtue. For the average citizen, All Might was practically a security blanket personified. Seeing that brilliant grin on the news or in person meant everything will be okay. He often arrived in the nick of time, turning disaster into triumph with a single punch or a clever rescue, and then made sure to reassure any trembling victims, often with a smile and a thumbs up. By doing so, he redefined heroism as a source of comfort and hope as much as a source of strength.
His rise also forced other heroes to reflect on their own approach. Some, like Endeavor, felt overshadowed and challenged. Endeavor trained harder, yes, but also became bitter, misunderstanding at first what truly made All Might adored. Others took inspiration and tried to spread All Might's ideals in their own communities. Even the next generation of students, like Deku, grew up idolizing All Might and wanting to follow in his footsteps. Izuku's notebook was filled with notes on All Might's heroics. This younger generation saw in All Might the pinnacle to strive for. Power used solely for others, confidence without arrogance, and kindness without weakness. When All Might's era finally came to an end, marked by his dramatic final battle in which he used up the last embers of One for All, the world was shaken. Crowds watched that fight live on television as All Might, emaciated and exhausted, still managed to win one last time against evil. In victory, he raised his fist and delivered a silent message. Now it's your turn, to the future. It was a poignant moment. The symbol of peace had fulfilled his duty once more, but also signaled that he could no longer be the sole pillar. Heroism would have to evolve again. The way All Might redefined heroism in his prime, making it about true, selfless justice, now had to be carried on by others. His example lives on at UA High, where he chose to teach and mentor young heroes after retiring, instilling in them the same values. In short, All Might was different from any hero before him because he embodied the ideal so completely. His legacy is a new standard, that being a hero isn't about one's ranking or quirk alone, but about the heart and hope you give to the world. Peace through power versus true justice, a thematic conflict. Throughout My Hero Academia, a quiet philosophical struggle underpins many conflicts. The question of peace through power versus true justice. In a world full of superpowered individuals, this theme asks, is peace best achieved by imposing order with sheer strength, or by adhering to deeper principles of justice and moral right? The series explores this question on multiple levels, through its characters and their choices. On one side of this coin, we have the idea of peace through power. All Might's reign of the symbol of peace is a prime example of this approach working for the greater good. By virtue of being so mighty, All Might enforced peace. Villains simply did not dare challenge him, which kept crime in check. The population could sleep comfortably, not necessarily because every criminal had been rehabilitated or every injustice corrected, but because one man's power deterred evil from showing its face. In a sense, society leaned on a single pillar of power to maintain order. Similarly, the Hero Public Safety Commission sometimes takes a hardline stance that leans toward this philosophy. They strategize how to use hero strengths to quickly quell villain threats, even if it means making tough, morally gray decisions in the shadows, such as secret missions, where a hero like Hawks might have to use lethal force to prevent a greater tragedy. This line of thinking values results. If the public is safe and calm, then peace is achieved, even if the method is heavy-handed. Opposing that is the concept of true justice. True justice is more than just quiet streets. It's a state where the means of peace are righteous and heroes act out of genuine altruism rather than fame or fear. True justice asks not just, is there peace, but at what cost, and is it fair? This viewpoint is often voiced by characters like Midoriya and his peers, who believe being a hero means saving people with a smile because it's the right thing to do, not for fame or fear. It's also vehemently, if darkly, championed by Stain, the hero killer. Stain's brutal campaign against fake heroes was based on his warped pursuit of purity and heroism. He decried heroes who were in it for salary or admiration, insisting that only those willing to sacrifice themselves for true justice deserve to be called heroes. While Stain is a villain in practice, his ideology shook up society and made many ponder what it means to be a hero beyond just quirk power. This tension between power and justice plays out in the rivalry between All Might and his nemesis, All for One. All for One is the embodiment of seeking power for power's sake. He accumulated countless quirks, amassing strength to bend others to his will. His form of peace, if one could call it that, is a dark mirror. He would rule from the shadows, controlling the underworld through fear, which is peace through domination. All Might, conversely, used power in service of others, which aligned power with justice. Their epic clash wasn't just a fight of fists, but a clash of ideologies, an authoritarian use of power versus a heroic use of power guided by justice. All Might's victory, at great personal sacrifice, symbolized that might alone doesn't make right. It's the heart behind the punch that matters. We also see this theme manifest in Endeavor's character arc. Endeavor long believed that peace could be won if only he had enough power. His obsession with surpassing All Might was, in effect, an obsession with being the strongest, thinking that alone would make him the greatest hero. But when Endeavor finally attains the #1 spot, he faces an uncomfortable truth. Raw power and a high rank aren't enough to earn people's love or trust. In a telling scene after a fierce battle, Endeavor raises his fist to signal victory, imitating All Might's symbolic gesture, and the watching crowd holds its breath. They're not sure if they can trust him yet, in the way they did All Might. Endeavor realizes he must change. He needs to show true justice by protecting others selflessly and atoning for his past arrogance before people will feel at peace through his presence. His journey becomes one of learning that being a hero isn't about power alone. It's about heart, responsibility, and making things genuinely right, especially within his own family. Another powerful illustration comes after All Might's retirement, when society plunges into a period of doubt. Without the symbol of peace, villains grew bolder, and citizens grew more anxious. Some voices clamored for stronger measures, more power, perhaps even draconian laws to fill the void of All Might. But others took a more humanistic approach. Heroes like Ochika Uraraka and the UA students emphasized empathy and unity. In one emotional scene, Ochika pleads with a panicked crowd to support the heroes who protect them, reminding everyone that heroes are humans with hearts, not just weapons of power. This appeal to understanding represents true justice as compassion. It suggests that real peace comes when people see each other's humanity, the powerful protecting the weak, and the community in turn uplifting its protectors. It's a more collaborative, just vision of society rather than one enforced by a lone figure of authority.
My Hero Academia doesn't present either side of this theme in a vacuum. It instead shows that balance is needed. Peace secured only by an iron fist can be fragile and oppressive, crumbling when that fist is gone. Conversely, noble ideals without the strength to defend them can ring hollow against actual threats. The series ultimately seems to advocate a heroism where power serves true justice. We see this in the story of Deku. He inherits All Might's power, but what makes Deku a worthy successor is his spirit. Even when he was quirkless and weak, he ran into danger to save someone because it was the right thing to do. That blend of courage and compassion is the essence of true justice. Now with power in hand, Deku constantly struggles to use it in the most just way, often opting to try saving or redeeming villains when possible, rather than simply defeating them. His journey is teaching the world that peace can come not just from the might of a few, but from the goodness of many working together. In the end, the theme of peace through power versus true justice invites viewers into a gentle reflection. What kind of peace do we want, and what are we willing to compromise to achieve it? Through the calm yet determined voices of its heroes, the anime suggests that the greatest peace is not won by fear or force alone, but by earning trust, doing what is right, and inspiring others to do the same. It's a lesson whispered in classroom lectures at UA, shouted in the heat of battle, and spoken softly between friends on the path to becoming heroes. And as the series continues, this theme remains at the heart of the story, a reminder that the strongest hero is one whose power is guided by a just and gentle heart. In the quiet hours of night, we continue our gentle exploration of My Hero Academia lore. This segment drifts through the life of Toshinori Yagi, better known as All Might, and the unseen weight he carried beneath his bright smile. We will reflect on All Might's early training under Nana Shimura, the grave injury that secretly weakened him, the cracks behind his image as the symbol of peace, and the heartfelt reason he chose Izuku Midoriya as his successor. The tone is soft and meditative, a calming journey through All Might's story, strictly following the canon. So get comfortable, close your eyes if you wish, and let's gently delve into the legacy of the world's greatest hero. A young hero and his mentor. Many years ago, a young Toshinori Yagi stood quirkless but determined, dreaming of bringing peace to a fearful world. His life changed when he met Nana Shimura, the seventh wielder of the one-for-all quirk. Nana saw in Toshinori a flicker of the same hope she carried. Under her guidance, he trained tirelessly to become a hero, even without a power of his own at first. In Nana's eyes, being a hero was not about the quirk one possessed, but the heart behind it. She often reminded Toshinori that real heroes save more than lives. They also save hearts. No matter how dark or dangerous the situation, she believed a true hero should smile so those in distress feel safe. No matter how scared you are, Nana would say gently, smile to show that things will be okay. In this world, those who are smiling are the strongest. These words settled deep in Toshinori's soul. Nana's values of bravery, compassion, and optimism became the foundation of All Might's own hero philosophy. She taught him that a reassuring smile can inspire hope even in the bleakest times. At first, Nana was hesitant to take Toshinori as her pupil. He was a boy with no quirk, facing a world filled with superpowered villains. But Toshinori's resolve was unshakable. He truly wanted to become a pillar of hope for people living in fear. Seeing his selfless determination, Nana's heart softened. With the help of her close friend Gran Torino, she began training Toshinori in secret, eventually passing on One for All to him. In doing so, Nana entrusted Toshinori not just with a quirk, but a mission, to become the next light that would illuminate the world. Through arduous training, she and Gran Torino taught him how to control the vast power he'd inherited. More importantly, Nana passed on her ideals, the importance of protecting others with a fearless smile and maintaining faith even when the odds are against you. Toshinori adored his mentor. Her encouragement and tough love shaped him from a timid dreamer into a true hero in training. In his heart, he vowed to honor Nana's teachings and one day fulfill their shared dream of a peaceful society where everyone could smile without fear. The cost of battle. Under Nana Shimura's mentorship, Toshinori grew stronger and more resolute. After graduating and further training abroad, he returned as the hero All Might, ready to face the world's evils head-on. Before long, destiny pitted him against the ultimate villain, All for One, the dark mastermind who had long terrorized society and who once killed Nana herself. In a fierce and fateful battle hidden from public view, All Might confronted All for One with every ounce of strength he had. This confrontation was a true clash of titans, a battle of One for All versus All for One, and All Might was determined to triumph not just for himself, but to avenge his mentor and protect everything she had fought for. All Might emerged victorious in that epic fight, finally bringing down his archenemy. However, this victory came at a terrible cost. In defeating All for One, All Might sustained grievous injuries that would change his life forever. The damage to his body was catastrophic. He lost a significant part of his anatomy, including his stomach, and his respiratory system was severely damaged beyond full recovery. After the battle, All Might found that he could only use One for All at peak capacity for a limited time each day before his energy burned out. After that, his body would revert to a gaunt and frail form, the true form of Toshinori Yagi, now scarred and perpetually wounded.
This drastic change was something All Might decided to keep secret from the public. Only a handful of close confidants knew the truth of his condition. To the world at large, All Might remained the same bold symbol of peace, seemingly invincible and ever ready to save the day with a smile. But behind closed doors, Toshinori bore the painful evidence of that battle. Each time he exceeded his small daily limit of power, the injuries would catch up to him. Coughing fits, blood on his handkerchief, and a fatigue that no ordinary person could imagine. Still, he endured it silently. All Might knew that society needed the symbol of peace. If people learned that their greatest hero had been gravely injured and was growing weaker, the fear and uncertainty that would spread could undo the very peace he and Nana had sacrificed so much to create. So he stood tall in the daylight, hiding his pain under a reassuring grin. The world never saw the toll that heroic battle had taken on him. In lonely moments, Toshinori would glance down at the massive scar carved across his side, a reminder of his mortality, and simply tighten his resolve. He had won, but he would never be the same. From that day forward, every time All Might shouted, "I am here," to save someone, he was burning away a bit of the dwindling flame that Nana had entrusted to him. Cracks beneath the symbol of peace. For years after his injury,
All Might continued to serve as the pillar of peace in hero society. Crime rates fell to unprecedented lows thanks to his presence. Villains feared him, and citizens rested easy knowing All Might watched over them. With his trademark booming laugh and fearless smile, All Might seemed as strong as ever. But behind that shining image, cracks had begun to form, both emotionally for Toshinori and institutionally within the hero system. The weight of carrying an entire society's hope on his shoulders grew heavier with each passing day, especially as his hidden weakness nagged at him. In private, Toshinori lived with constant pain and the knowledge that his time as the unstoppable hero was running out. He had to carefully schedule his hero work to fit within the few hours he could maintain his powerful form. Public appearances, rescues, and fights were all timed and calculated. He would often greet crowds and stop crime in a flash, then retreat out of sight as his power faded, never letting anyone witness the exhaustion that came afterward. Maintaining this illusion of invincibility was an immense psychological burden. He rarely allowed himself to appear vulnerable or worried. He felt he owed it to everyone to always be their reassuring beacon. This meant that his fears and doubts stayed locked away in his own heart. Emotionally, All Might carried scars that were deeper than the wound on his side. He never truly overcame the grief of losing Nana Shimura, his beloved mentor, and it haunted him to know that the very villain who took her life was still out there plotting in the shadows for so long. He also felt the isolation that came with being a symbol. Who could he confide in about his worries? Very few. All Might had allies, of course. Recovery Girl at UA knew of his condition and fussed over his health. Gran Torino remained a stern father figure who reminded him to be careful. And there was Sir Night-Eye, All Might's former sidekick and dear friend. But even among trusted friends, Toshinori struggled with the idea of stepping away or showing weakness. He was afraid of letting anyone down. Over time, this led to quiet tensions. Night-Eye, in particular, grew deeply concerned about All Might's secret injury and the toll it was taking on him. Night-Eye, whose quirk allowed him to foresee future events, saw a grim vision. If All Might kept fighting at the front lines, a day would come, not too many years into the future, when he would face a deadly enemy and suffer a fate even worse than his current condition. In this possible future, All Might would lose his life in gruesome fashion. Horrified by that prospect, Night-Eye pleaded with Toshinori to retire at once, or at least drastically ease off his hero duties. Even Principal Nezu of UA High, who also knew All Might's secret, gently suggested that All Might consider finding a successor for One for All sooner rather than later. Nezu understood that the symbol of peace couldn't hold up society forever on his own. These concerns were valid. Everyone could see that All Might's flame was slowly shrinking, except the general public, who remained unaware. But All Might could not bring himself to step down. Not yet. In those years, even though All for One had been defeated and was in hiding, new villains would inevitably rise. All Might believed it was his responsibility to keep guarding the peace until the next pillar was ready to take over. When Night-Eye urged him to think of his own life, Toshinori simply asked, "If I bow out now, who will hold the line? Who will be there if a threat like All for One returns?" All Might felt that as long as he had even a flicker of strength left, he had to continue as the shield for society. This fundamental disagreement led to a heartbreaking rift between All Might and Sir Night-Eye. Night-Eye could not bear to watch the man he admired march toward a death he had foreseen. In desperation, Night-Eye even proposed a candidate for successor, a promising young hero student on whom he had set his hopes. But All Might, stubborn and self-sacrificing, insisted it was too early. He was not ready to pass on One for All yet, nor to leave the front lines. Finally, Night Eye gave Toshinori an ultimatum. If All Might refused to slow down and save himself, Night Eye would no longer support his hero work. He loved his mentor figure dearly, but he would not watch All Might destroy himself. Toshinori, firmly resolved to continue as symbol of peace, said goodbye to his friend and sidekick. They parted ways, leaving All Might deeply saddened. It was an unseen crack in All Might's life. The world never knew that the great hero had lost the partnership of someone he trusted. This loneliness and sorrow remained tucked behind All Might's ever-present grin. Beyond All Might's personal struggles, the hero institutions themselves had vulnerabilities linked to his legend. So much of Japan's stability depended on one man. Other heroes looked up to All Might as an ideal, but that also meant that some of them became complacent, letting the symbol of peace handle the worst threats. The public, too, placed unrealistic expectations on All Might. He was expected to always win, always arrive in time, always keep everyone safe. It was a flawless image that no real person could sustain indefinitely. Though crime was low and villains stayed in the shadows during All Might's prime years, there were whispers of unease within certain circles. Some heroes, like Endeavor, the perpetually ranked number 2 hero, harbored frustration and envy in All Might's shadow, highlighting how the system's focus on one top symbol could breed resentment. And in the underworld, patient malice was brewing. All Might's very existence inspired some villains to scheme and evolve, waiting for any sign of weakness. In essence, Hero Society had built a fragile piece on the back of one symbol. It worked splendidly for a time, but it meant that if All Might ever faltered, the shock to society would be immense. All Might himself was painfully aware of this. Every time he felt the sting of his wounds, he worried not for himself, but for what would happen to everyone if he could no longer be their cornerstone. This awareness was another silent burden he carried, the knowledge that one day, the peace he maintained might be tested when he was gone.
Still, despite these hidden cracks, All Might did not lose hope. He remembered Nana's teachings and the sacrifices of those before him. The cracks in his strength and in Hero Society's foundations only motivated him to think more about the future. He knew eventually the torch of One for All would have to be passed on, just as Nana passed it to him. Perhaps, he thought quietly, somewhere out there was a worthy successor, someone with the right heart to continue the mission. Toshinori began to keep an eye out, even as he continued his hero duties. Years went by with this secret search in mind, but he could not have predicted the fateful encounter that was soon to come, one that would answer his unspoken prayers in the most unexpected way. Passing the torch to Izuku Midoriya. One clear afternoon, after a routine crime patrol, All Might crossed paths with a young middle school student named Izuku Midoriya. Their meetings seemed coincidental. All Might had just defeated a villain made of sludge and stored the writhing creature in a bottle when this green-haired boy came stumbling into his life. Izuku was quirkless, much like Toshinori had once been, and he was a huge fan of All Might. Star-eyed and admiring, with notebooks full of hero analysis. Initially, All Might treated the encounter as he would with any fan, friendly but brief. He even tried to keep his weakening time limit a secret, going so far as to conceal his true, frail form from the boy. But events took a dramatic turn when the captured sludge villain escaped and attacked one of Izuku's classmates, none other than Katsuki Bakugo, a boy with explosive powers. The villain ensnared Katsuki on a crowded city street, and numerous heroes nearby struggled to decide how to intervene in this dangerous situation. Izuku, though powerless and outmatched, did something extraordinary. He ran forward without hesitation to try and save his friend. The sight stunned everyone. This quirkless boy, tears in his eyes but resolved to act, hurled himself at the villain in a desperate bid to free Katsuki.
In that split second, Izuku's body moved on pure instinct, the instinct of a true hero. All Might saw it all. He had been watching from the sidelines, trapped in his weakened form, and frustrated that he had exceeded his time limit. Seeing Izuku charge in triggered something in Toshinori's heart. It was as if he were looking at his younger self, back when he too was a quirkless youth with a heroic spirit that refused to back down. Izuku's courage ignited All Might's own. With a surge of will, Toshinori pushed past his limits and transformed one more time into the mighty form of All Might. He leapt in to smash the villain with a supreme punch, rescuing both Izuku and Katsuki in the blink of an eye. After the dust settled and the villain was secured, All Might slipped away to avoid revealing his debilitated state to the public. But he did not forget what he witnessed in Izuku Midoriya. Later that evening, All Might found Izuku again. The boy was dejected, having been scolded by other heroes for his reckless attempt, and still believing that All Might disapproved of him. In truth, All Might was quietly overjoyed and deeply moved. He approached Izuku with kindness. With a serious but gentle tone, he thanked the boy for what he did, admitting that Izuku's brave actions had inspired even the symbol of peace himself. All Might then revealed the secret of One for All to Izuku, explaining that his own quirk could be passed from one person to another like a sacred torch. Izuku listened, eyes wide and unbelieving as All Might spoke. Toshinori could see the flicker of hope and disbelief in the young fan's face. Kneeling down so that he could look Izuku in the eye, All Might declared that he had made a decision. Izuku Midoriya would be his successor, the next bearer of One for All. At first, Izuku was speechless. This was everything he had ever dreamed of, yet it felt impossible. Why would All Might choose him, a quirkless nobody, to inherit such incredible power? Sensing his doubt, All Might smiled. Not the flashy grin he showed the cameras, but a warm, proud smile meant just for this deserving young man. He told Izuku the honest truth. He saw himself in Izuku. Despite having no quirk, Izuku had shown the soul of a hero by risking himself to save another. All Might had been searching for a long time for the right person to carry on the legacy of One for All. Many candidates had crossed his path, some with great power or talent, but none of them had the combination of courage, selflessness, and heart that Izuku displayed that day. In Izuku, All Might saw the embodiment of the values that Nana Shimura had taught him. Izuku's innate heroism, his drive to help others at any cost, and even his quirkless origin all convinced All Might that this boy was the one who could truly understand the responsibility that came with the quirk. With tears welling up, Izuku accepted All Might's offer. It was an emotional moment for both of them, a mixture of joy, relief, and a profound sense of destiny. For Izuku, it was the beginning of a dream come true. For All Might, it was the beginning of letting go and ensuring the future would be in good hands. In the coming months, All Might carefully trained Izuku to prepare his body and spirit for One for All. They spent long hours cleaning a trash-filled beach as training, each piece of debris lifted serving to strengthen Izuku's muscles and resolve. Toshinori was patient and encouraging, pushing Izuku to overcome limits while always keeping the boy's well-being in mind. Over time, a genuine mentor-student bond formed between them, full of mutual respect and trust. All Might guided Izuku not just in building strength, but in understanding what it means to be a hero, the importance of protecting others, the meaning of sacrifice, and the need for a caring heart in heroism. Izuku absorbed all these lessons eagerly, just as Toshinori once absorbed Nana's teachings.
Finally, when All Might deemed Izuku ready, he performed the simple yet profound ritual to pass on One for All, a transfer of DNA, symbolically done by having Izuku ingest a strand of All Might's hair. With a smile and a playful encouragement, "Eat this," he had quipped, making Izuku laugh through his nerves. All Might entrusted his very power to the boy who had earned it. In that moment,
All Might felt a deep sense of peace. For years he had worried about the future and what would happen if he could no longer stand as the symbol of peace. Now, looking at Izuku, teary-eyed, determined, and shining with potential, All Might knew that the future was bright. He had found someone who would carry on the flame just as Nana had hoped he would. The relief and pride he felt were immeasurable. All Might didn't announce Izuku as his successor to the world. It remained a secret between them and a trusted few, but internally, Toshinori could finally accept that one day, when his own strength faded completely, hope would not die. It would live on in Izuku. As teacher and student, they continued to walk together at UA High School, with All Might now serving as a mentor figure, not just to Izuku, but to all young heroes in training. The hidden cracks in All Might's life began to heal, ever so slightly, now that he was no longer alone carrying his burden. He had someone to share the torch with, and that made all the difference. Before, All Might was the lone pillar holding up the sky. Now he was gently passing the sky onto Atlas's shoulders, preparing the next generation to support the weight of the world. In quiet moments, Toshinori would watch Izuku practice and smile to himself, a genuine, content smile. He often thought of Nana Shimura during these times. How proud she would be, seeing how her teachings had been passed down not just to Toshinori, but now to Izuku as well. The values of kindness, courage, and the will to uplift others were thriving in this new successor. In Izuku's earnest eyes, Toshinori could even sense Nana's compassionate spirit living on. As night deepens in our story, we leave All Might standing on the threshold of a new chapter. He remains the symbol of peace a little while longer, but with Izuku by his side, the burden is lighter. The great hero has been secretly weakened, and the world will one day come to see his true form and learn of his sacrifices. But not tonight. Tonight, in this gentle recollection, we take comfort in knowing that All Might's legacy is in good hands. Izuku Midoriya carries the torch forward into the future, guided by the wisdom of Nana Shimura and All Might's own unwavering spirit. In this soft ending, imagine All Might looking out over the sleeping city he protects. The moonlight catches the lingering smile on his face. It's not the public smile he wore like a mask for so long, but a humble, relieved smile of a mentor who has fulfilled his duty. He whispers into the night, perhaps to the memory of Nana Shimura. "I've found him, the one who will carry on." The symbol of peace, despite all the hidden wounds and worries, can finally rest easier. His era, forged by smiles and sacrifice, is gently giving way to a new dawn, and with it, the promise that the light of heroism will never fade. Sleep now with these thoughts of hope and continuity. The story of All Might reminds us that even our greatest heroes have their secret struggles, yet they persevere and find a way to ensure the goodness they champion will live on. As we close our eyes, we hold in our hearts the comforting idea that for every pillar that grows weary, a new pillar will rise, and the values of peace and compassion will endure across generations like an eternal flame passed from one hand to the next.
Training the next symbol of hope. All Might's first act as a teacher figure is to train Izuku's body to handle One for All's power. In a now famous montage of sweat and perseverance, All Might crafts a harsh 10-month training regimen for the boy. He has Izuku clear an entire beach full of trash as a way to build muscle and resilience. Day after day, All Might guides Izuku through intense workouts at Takoba Seaside Park, hauling scrap metal, doing cardio and strength drills, pushing beyond limits.
Izuku often overworks himself in his eagerness, and All Might gently scolds him for risking injury, worried the plan could backfire. But when Izuku explains why he's pushing so hard, his dream to truly become a hero like All Might, it gives the veteran hero a poignant insight into the young man's passion. All Might realizes that Izuku's determination matches his own. Finally, by summer's end, Izuku manages the impossible. He clears the entire coastline of debris. All Might looks at the transformed muscular youth with pride. Izuku's body is now a worthy vessel for One for All. On the morning of UA High's entrance exam, All Might passes on the quirk, in comedic fashion, having Izuku swallow a strand of his hair. This strange yet sincere moment cements their bond. All Might has officially given the world its next symbol of hope, even as he takes a step back. As Izuku runs off to the exam, nervous but resolved, All Might watches like a proud parent. He believes in this boy wholeheartedly. A heroic teacher at UA High. With Izuku on the path to UAA, All Might himself joins the esteemed school's faculty. He takes up a post teaching foundational hero studies at UA High School, starting Izuku's first year. This is a new chapter for All Might. No longer fighting villains on the front lines each day, but guiding classes of wide-eyed students learning to become heroes. It isn't an easy adjustment. In the classroom, All Might initially struggles with the basics of teaching. He's more used to punching villains than grading papers. Yet he approaches this role with the same earnest heart he brought to heroism. Dressed in his bright yellow suit and always smiling, he throws himself into training the students in practical exercises. Early on, All Might oversees combat training where students pair off to duel. He watches Izuku, now nicknamed Deku, cleverly work with Ochiko to win a mock battle against Katsuki Bakugo. He can't help but be impressed. Izuku is already applying strategies inspired by watching his idol. When villains later invade the unforeseen simulation joint facility, All Might demonstrates that although he's a teacher, he's still very much a hero at heart. He arrives in the nick of time to save his class from dire peril. In a dramatic showdown, All Might faces the bioengineered monster Nomu to protect his students. He pushes beyond his normal limit, far beyond, to defeat the creature. In fact, it takes over 300 mighty blows for All Might to bring Nomu down, a feat that would have only required 5 hits in his prime. The enormous effort leaves him drained, but victorious. This scene shows All Might's unyielding devotion. As a teacher, he will still risk everything to keep his students safe. Through acts like this, he teaches by example, demonstrating what it truly means to be a hero who protects others at all costs. Outside of combat, All Might's presence itself is a comfort to the young heroes. He encourages them at the sports festival, gives them pointers during training, and shares tales of heroism that inspire the whole class. Izuku in particular hangs on to every word, learning not just combat moves, but the ethos of heroism, bravery, self-sacrifice, and heart. All Might has become a pillar of support in Izuku's life. Over time, the students notice that All Might's larger-than-life persona is tempered by a certain wistfulness. They sense he is grooming them to surpass him. And indeed, All Might finds that teaching fills him with a new joy. Each student's progress is like another victory for him. It's a way to keep saving people, not by his own hands, but through nurturing their hands.
Guiding Midoriya's growth in battle and spirit. Throughout Izuku Midoriya's hero journey, All Might's influence is a constant guiding light. In combat, Izuku uses his One for All, the quirk inherited from All Might, as his ultimate weapon. But it's All Might's mentorship that truly shapes how Izuku fights and why he fights. During the UA final exams, All Might himself participates to test Izuku and Bakugo's progress. Acting as an enemy in a controlled exercise, he battles Izuku and Bakugo to push them beyond their limits. This is no easy spar. All Might dons weighted restraints, but still comes at the two boys with daunting power. He throws Bakugo aside and challenges Izuku head-on, forcing the duo to work together if they hope to pass. Despite taking some harsh blows from their teacher, Izuku refuses to give up. In a climactic moment of the exam, Izuku remembers All Might's teachings, the importance of teamwork and strategy over brute force alone. He and Bakugo finally coordinate their attacks and manage to briefly stun All Might. Instead of trying to beat the unbeatable, Izuku makes the wise decision to escape to the finish line, carrying an unconscious Bakugo on his back, thus passing the exam. When it's over, All Might can't hide his pride. Through this tough love test, he imparted to Izuku that a true hero must balance courage with wisdom. The way Izuku applied that lesson in the field shows just how much he's grown under All Might's tutelage. Outside of training scenarios, All Might also guides Izuku through personal trials. When Izuku faces doubts or dangerous temptations to overextend himself, All Might is there with quiet advice and reassurance. A memorable example comes after the horrific battle with the villain Stain, when Izuku is nursing injuries from pushing One for All too far. All Might gently advises him on finding his own fighting style, suggesting Izuku innovate new moves, like Izuku's shoot style, using his legs so he won't destroy his arms. This careful mentorship helps Izuku adapt and overcome obstacles. And when tragedy strikes or pressures mount, All Might provides a steady shoulder. After one exhausting series of events, All Might meets Izuku under a street lamp outside the dormitories. Izuku is fatigued and anxious about living up to the legacy. All Might, even in his gaunt form, puts a comforting hand on his student's shoulder and reminds him that he isn't alone on this path. Perhaps one of the most emotional moments of All Might's mentorship happens when Katsuki Bakugo discovers the secret of One for All. Bakugo, feeling frustrated and left behind, challenges Izuku to a private duel at night. When All Might intervenes afterward, he finds the two boys battered and emotionally raw. Instead of anger, All Might responds with understanding. He apologizes to young Bakugo for not seeing his struggles and confides the full truth. He chose Izuku as successor because of the boy's heroic heart. In that heartfelt talk, All Might manages to console Bakugo and reaffirm Izuku, bridging the rift between them. Both students leave with a deeper respect for their mentor. All Might's ability to inspire hope and unity in his pupils, even in their lowest moments, shows how teaching is its own form of heroism. The final battle. All Might's dual role as hero and teacher climaxes in his final battle against All for One. In a titanic clash at Camino Ward, All Might faces the arch-villain who once nearly ended him. This fight is different from any before. Every punch All Might throws is with the knowledge that these are the last embers of his power. Pushing far past his limits, drawing on sheer will, All Might refuses to fall. The world watches in awe and terror as their greatest hero expends everything he has left to defeat evil one last time. In the end, All Might is victorious. He delivers a smashing United States of Smash that knocks All for One out for good. But as the dust clears, the truth is evident. All Might's flame has finally burned out. He stands on the battlefield in his skeletal form, the muscular hero guise gone, arm raised in triumph. With television cameras trained on him, All Might summons the strength to make one final declaration. He points to the screen and says, "Next, it's your turn." His voice is calm but resolute. To the public, it sounds like he's warning any remaining villains that their turn will come. But Izuku Midoriya, watching from the crowd with tears in his eyes, understands the deeper message. Those words are meant for him. All Might is telling Izuku, "I've done all I can. Now you will carry on from here." In that profound moment, All Might proficially passes the torch to his student. The burden of an entire society's hope shifts onto Izuku's young shoulders. Izuku breaks down crying, fully aware that All Might will never fight again. In a sense, the invincible hero All Might has died. His era is over. But what could be a scene of despair is instead filled with hope and pride. All Might uses his last ounce of strength not to smash a villain, but to reassure the world that a new hero will rise. He entrusts everyone's safety to the next generation. Even as he collapses, All Might's heart is at peace, because he knows the future is in good hands. A new way to protect the future. After that day, Toshinori Yagi, All Might's true identity, retires from heroics completely. His muscular form can no longer manifest. The mighty All Might exists now only in memory. Yet far from being a melancholy epilogue, this is a second beginning for him. All Might embraces his role as a teacher and mentor with renewed dedication. He returns to UA High School not as the symbol of peace, but as a humble homeroom teacher and guide for Class 1A. Teaching becomes All Might's new way to protect the world. By pouring his wisdom and love into Izuku and the other students, he ensures that the torch of peace he once carried will continue to burn brightly. In staff meetings and training sessions, All Might contributes however he can, strategizing ways to help the young heroes improve. He might not have super strength anymore, but he has a wealth of experience and a compassionate soul that the students rely on. All Might's emotional journey during this time is quietly profound. Having lost the power that defined him, he wrestles with feelings of inadequacy, but he also discovers that his value was never just his quirk. It was his spirit, his unwavering dedication to justice and to others that truly made him a hero. Now he channels that spirit into uplifting the next generation. He spends hours mentoring Izuku on control and strategy, helping him master One for All's quirks. He smiles as he watches Izuku grow more confident and strong, knowing each step forward for the boy is one more step toward a safer future for all. All Might also supports his other students, offering a kind word to those who doubt themselves and celebrating their achievements. In doing so, he realizes that he is still saving people, not by punching villains, but by nurturing heroes. A touching example of All Might's commitment as a teacher comes when he visits Izuku's home to convince Mrs. Midoriya to let her son continue at UA. All Might bows deeply, apologizing for putting Izuku in danger and promising to safeguard the boy's life with his own. "Together we will go beyond. I will lift him up. I will protect your son, even if it'll cost me my life," he vows earnestly. This heartfelt plea, coming from a man who is no longer in his prime, shows that All Might's heroic resolve hasn't dimmed at all. He gains the trust of Izuku's mother not through power or intimidation, but through humility and love. In that moment, All Might truly embodies the role of a guardian and teacher. He has found meaning beyond the glory of being the world's strongest. He finds it in being there for a worried parent and a determined child.
If you enjoyed this journey through My Hero Academia, subscribe now for more deep dives and quiet hero stories. This channel is new, and all the support you can give really goes a long way. Make sure to comment what else you want to see. Thanks again.